Look what I got. Oh, it just came. I literally just unwrapped it from the packaging. Still got a sticker on it. So I've never blown one before, ever. And I wanted to capture this first attempt on camera. I might not use this. It depends on how stupid I sound. Let's see. I have no idea even how to hold it. Here goes nothing. Ooh, I like this one better. That does nothing. All right, it's going to take some practice. It's hollow. And, but hey, I made a sound. Just shows you, if you give it your all. Okay, so we got 26 days to Hashanah trumpets. And we're going to dive back into chapter 2 of Esther because the Rapture story is so rich in there. And then we'll get to our dates. I'm going to revisit our timeline because almost all of it is still legit. And what we're going to do is take this 105 days that we thought before, and we're just going to put it over here, and I'm going to show you how that works. So, oh, this is such an exciting time. I think we really have been brought on this path specifically at the face of the Promised Land, and then 40 years of wandering for 3 years to come back to the opening of the Promised Land and to have the understanding. And remember, Rosh Hashanah is actually understood to be the birthday of the universe. This is when God started everything, was during this time period. So how fitting to end it exactly at that time too. And there's just so much to teach on that. We're gonna dedicate a few videos specifically to that. But back to Esther chapter 2. Okay, let's dive into our chapter 2 of Esther, the Rapture story revealed. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, Let there be fair young virgins sought after for the king, and let the king appoint officers to all the provinces, remember 127 provinces, of the kingdom, that they gather together all the fair young virgins, Christians. We're looking for the Christians. Remember, it's like a parable of the 10 virgins. And bring all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Haggai, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden, which pleaseth the king, be queen instead of Vashti. So, remember the story of Enoch. Enoch had this testimony. Enoch had this testimony that he pleased God. It's in Hebrews 11. Let's go there. Hebrews 11, chapter 5. By faith, Enoch, the dedicated one, remember it's the Feast of Dedication, so he's dedicated. By faith, dedicated, was translated that he should not see death, and was not found, because God had raptured him, harpazo. He took him, and he wasn't there because he translated him from a human flesh being into a supernatural, super eternal being, a spiritual renewal. So he translated him from this state of mortal to immortality, from corruptible to incorruption, from terrestrial to extraterrestrial, but not an alien. You know, it's the good kind. So Enoch was not found because God had translated him. Before his translation, he had this testimony that he pleased God. So now Esther is being brought to under the care of Haggai. And remember, Haggai means meditate on the word. We'll talk about that more in a minute. And let the maiden, which pleaseth the king, be queen instead of Vashti, and Vashti represents Israel. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now in Shushan, the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai. That means warrior. There was a certain Jew named Warrior, the son of Jair. Jair means he shines. The son of Shammai. Remember Shammai, Israel? That means hearing. The son of Kish. Kish means power. A Benjamite. Benjamin means son of the right hand. So, in Shushan, the palace, there was a certain Jew named Warrior, the son of he shines, the son of hearing, the son of power, the son of the right hand. How you like that? Who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jeconiah, the king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. Okay, so Jeconiah is Yah has established. Like, this was God's plan. Yah has established. This Jew was carried away, warrior, was carried away with the tribe of Judah. Judah means praise. So this warrior was carried away with the tribe of praise, and it was God has established. So it was all part of God's plan. Now listen, Nebuchadnezzar, his name means God protect my eldest son. God protect my eldest son. So who's God's eldest son? A bunch of you said Jesus, didn't you? But it's Israel. Remember in the Exodus story, God told Moses to tell Pharaoh, Israel is my eldest son. Let them go. Jesus is the first begotten son. So he is the first from God, but Israel is the first earth version. So they both are kind of first. But in this case, God protect my eldest son is talking about the story that is to bring about the salvation of the Jews. Okay, and he brought... Okay, so what did Warrior do? Mordecai, what did he do? He brought up Hadassah, which is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So, why does she have two names? So we can tell more prophecy. Hadassah means myrtle. But myrtle, the myrtle tree, it's a symbol of recovery and establishment of God's promise. See how he's telling this story is happening, and everybody knows the story of Esther. You know, if I die, I die. You know, the predestination of these events to take place at the perfect timing to bring about God's plan. So this is establishing our plan, which is the rapture, and then also what will happen to Israel as soon as we're taken. So Hadassah means myrtle, the recovery and establishment of God's promises, and then Esther means star. And you remember in Daniel, he says they'll shine bright as a star. Let's go there. Daniel, that would be Daniel 12. And I think it's verse 3 or 4. Let's see. Daniel 12. Turn many righteousness. Yes. Okay. Daniel 12:3. And they that be wise shall shine as brightness of the firmament, and they shall turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. That's us. Let's talk about the end time. Let's talk about us. This story about Esther, the star, is turning people to righteousness. Okay. Where are we? Okay, so it came to pass, when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and many of the maidens were gathered together unto Shushan, the palace, the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also into the king's house to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for her purification. So, do you remember how you're purified? Oh, let's go back to Daniel. Let's go back to Daniel, because right back in Daniel 12. Okay, so this is God's explanation of the end times to Daniel in this vision. This is the last chapter, and he says, let's see. Let's just read all of chapter 12, because it's not that long, and it's all poignant to our story. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was, since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book of life. When are the books of life and death open? During the days of awe that start with the Feast of Trumpets. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall wake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Again, this happens during the Feast of Trumpets, days of awe, and the Day of Atonement. And the Jews understand the resurrection of the dead will happen at the Feast of Trumpets. That's what they've always believed. That's what they teach. And they that be wise shall shine as brightness of the firmament. And they that turn many to righteousness, like what we're trying to do here, they that turn many to righteousness as the stars, forever and ever will be bright as the stars. Shine bright like a diamond. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. And as Pastor Sandy teaches, the Ladon ha'akaron, the last generation, the terminal generation. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. But I love the Amplified Version. Many shall run to and fro through this scroll, like what we love to do. We go back and forth, chapter to chapter to chapter. And knowledge of God's purpose and his plan shall be increased. And so as these last years, as we're being purified and made white, and knowledge is being increased of his plan. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two on the one side of the bank of the river, and on the other side of the bank of the river. And the one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, How long shall it be till the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. That's 3.5 years. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the Lado ha'akaron, till the terminal generation. This generation, fig tree generation that started in 1948 and is us right now. Look at. Remember this. Many shall be purified and made white and tried. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. That's what's going on with Esther in the story, with Haggai, which means meditate on the word, and that is for her purification. You are purified and made white by meditating on this word, returning back to Torah as we learn in Elul, blowing the trumpets, turning your focus back to the Lord, and reading and meditating on this word or listening through the internet. Many would be purified and made white during this period of time. Remember when he says to Moses, tell the people, sanctify yourselves and get ready for, on the third day I'm going to come down. So he said, prepare thyself, right? So what's been going on the past 3 years? Many people will say, oh, nothing's been happening. The wicked will say, nothing's been happening. The wicked will never understand. They will continue to do wickedly. And wicked just means without Christ. And unfortunately, there are people that claim to be Christians that are doing wickedly and denying our end time and this prophecy and this understanding, and that the Lord is trying to talk to us and that he's good and he's going to rapture his bride away because she pleased him. So many will run to and fro through this scroll. Knowledge will be increased. Many will be purified and made white by the washing of the word. And from that time, let's see, I just want to make sure I didn't skip anything. But the wicked shall not understand, but the wise shall understand. And from that time, that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away. I think about it like this. I remember a teacher taught that this means that which has continued. From the time that that which has continued shall be taken away. So think about it as the rapture. From the time that we get raptured, and the abomination that makes desolate set up. So from the time of our rapture until the abomination of desolation gets set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Look what we have here. We thought rapture was early. We're going to move this right to Feast of Trumpets. So from the time that the daily sacrifice gets taken away, from the time that which has continued is taken away, the rapture of the church that has continued for 2,000 years since Jesus, from the time that which has continued, the daily sacrifice of our lips, is taken away, until the abominations of desolation is set up during the Passover week is 1290 days. That's exactly what we had predicted. See, I got right here, abomination of desolation, right there. So all these dates, Jupiter getting hit with that comet and leaving 21 spots, comet Ison, the blood moons, the conception comet, the sign of Jonah. We got to go over that again. This is a sign he promised to the Jews, and he said, from the time of all the beginning news, sign of Jonah. There was a sign of Jonah. It was on April 11th, Passover 2017. This was before the Revelation 12 sign. Well, from that date, right past what we thought was Pentecost Rapture, right past that to our Feast of Trumpets, 9/18, 1920, is your 1260 days. You think God's not going to use that? I think he's going to use it. I really love it. Revelation 12 sign, the Great American Eclipse. Look at last Passover, the branch opened in Spica. A black hole opened. Remember when Revelation 12 guy was teaching about, that prophecy of Shushan or Shoshani or whatever that guy's name is, and he says, know this and understand that Jesus is already standing at the door. Man, I really thought that was the rapture when that black hole opened. I'm like, the door opened. And it was in Spica, which is the hand of the Virgin holding the branch. So the black hole, a door opened in heaven. A black hole is a door to another dimension, right? And it opened. But that was at Passover. Then this Rosh Hashanah, did anything happen this past Rosh Hashanah? I'll tell you what. I remember thinking, there's no way we're going into 2019. Because we hit 2017 and we understood that was what we thought was the 6,000th year, but it was 17 into 18, right? So the Revelation 12 sign fit perfectly with what he taught in Exodus and in Leviticus, where he said, in the seventh year, so the 49th year, you make the proclamation, and then to start the Jubilee the following year. So the Jubilee year actually was 18 to 19. So that's what I was like, okay, there's no way we're going into 19. And then we started to understand, well, you don't get raptured during the Jubilee year. You got to wait till after. And then we tied in the 3-year thing. Oh my goodness. All right. We've been around the block a few times. But anyways, all of it is now fitting perfectly. I hope I didn't confuse everybody with my rambling. Okay. So from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, yoink, and the abomination of desolation set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that comes and waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days, 1,335 days. Okay, and so Passover here, 1,290 days. 1,335 is you're going to add another 75 days to the Passover. Guess where that brings you? Yeah, right back to Pentecost and the Pentecost rapture that we thought of. Blessed is he that cometh after the abomination desolation. Run for the hills. And then a mid-tribulation rapture at that Pentecost could fit perfectly. Of course, a little bit of speculation. Oh, just a little bit of speculation on my part. But all these things fit together, don't they? All right, let's get back to Esther. Don't you just love these stories? Oh, when you understand this is about our future and it's a future prophecy and it's a mystery to be figured out, it's a lot more fun, isn't it? I tell you, translate any word that you can. It's so easy with Google now. You just say Hebrew meaning of Hadassah, and it says myrtle. You're like, okay, Hebrew meaning of myrtle. Oh, the recovery and establishment of God's promises. I just love that. Okay, where are we? So it came to pass when the king's commandment and decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought into the king's house in the custody of Haggai, the keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained the kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for her purification, the word of God, which such things belonged to her and the 7 maidens, that represents the 7 churches, which were meet to be given to her out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids unto the best place in the house of the women. Okay? So that's like, he refers you to the best channels on the YouTube. And Esther had not shewed her, people or her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not. So she wasn't coming saying, I'm a Jew, look at me, I'm a Jew. She was kind of hiding that back. And I think that is to show that she can represent all the nations too. Because again, we are the childbirth from Virgo, the Israel. Israel is our spiritual mother, if you will, because there would be no Christian if there had not come out of the Jews, right? Okay. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the woman's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. Okay, now when every maid's turn had come to go into King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months according to the manner of women. For such were the days of her purification accomplished, to wit, 6 months with the oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of women. So, look up oil of myrrh, and it is one of the spices used to anoint the dead, but it's also a spice used to anoint the new king and priest. And it's also a painkiller. Remember, they mixed wine with myrrh, or vinegar, was it vinegar and myrrh, to give to Jesus. And he's like, no, I don't want it, because it's a powerful painkiller. Well, we've been anointed with powerful pain-killing messages, because the world's pain. The world out there is just, so painful. And then we see this blessed hope. So we've been being anointed, especially this past year, 6 months with the oil of myrrh, and the resurrection of the dead spice, and the anointing of the king and queen and priest spice, and then 6 months with the sweet odors. Okay, so if you look up the sweet odors, they were offered, that was different. There's different kind of offerings. There were the sin offering and the trespass offering that were offered outside of the temple court. Okay, and they were burnt completely. But the sweet odors, that offering was a free will offering, like the Pentecost offering that Jeff Sherwood was teaching us about. That free will offering and a peace offering, those are only offered by free will to the Lord, and it had to do with dedication, and it had to do with the heart of why you were doing it and the heart of why you were giving. And so it was a totally different thing. So that kind of fits with, our end time group here, that we seek the Lord and anxiously anticipate, and we want to serve him in any way we can. So again, I just keep saying, things have been going on in the supernatural, and from Rosh Hashanah 2019, when we thought there's no way we can enter into another Hebrew year. This is definitely it. The Jubilee's over, entering in, and then it seemed like nothing happened, but what's been happening? We've been being purified and made white. And that's what the prophecy of Daniel says at the end time. He doesn't say, okay, Daniel, close up the book, because then at the end time, rapture will happen. No, he says at the end time, many will be purified and made white. And that's like what he told Moses to tell them. Sanctify yourselves. Purify yourselves. Come not at your wife. Prepare yourself to meet the Lord. And so it's been 3 years instead of 3 days. Then thus came every maiden unto the king. Whatsoever she desired was given to her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women to the custody of Shazgaz. And Shazgaz means servant of the lovely. So I'm kind of playing the part of a Shazgaz kind of guy, because I'm the servant of you lovely people, and I'm the servant of my lovely wife, and I'm the servant of my lovely beloved. A position I would gladly play anytime. So Shazgaz was the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. Now, concubine, that sounds like a dirty word, right? It was a woman that was also married or in the king's house, but she wasn't the official wife, but she did have status and rights. Okay, so it was a good thing. Unlike a harlot, which a harlot is a paid prostitute that is not allowed in the house. Don't bring your harlots in the house. Okay, don't bring concubines either. I'm sorry, this is a sticky situation. This Bible is a sticky situation. Okay, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Okay, so I'm not sure how it's going to be in heaven, but there's not going to be a billion Jesuses each standing with each of us. So, it is going to be the real physical him in front of the real physical us. And I do believe, because he showed us the example in his disciples. Okay, he had 12 disciples. One of them betrayed him and got kicked out and got replaced. Then of the other 9, there were 3 very special, Peter, James, and John. But of the 3, John was the disciple whom Jesus loved. He was the beloved disciple that laid his head upon his chest. So I think that's how it's going to be in heaven. There's going to be Jesus and a group of his most close, perhaps the bride, and then the second group, perhaps also a bride, and then as we go out, maybe I'm not going to say concubines, but I think that some people will be in his presence always, and some people will have to wait to be called, and that's understandable. If a person turned Christian 20 years ago and then has absolutely no time for that religious stuff and doesn't want to hear any of this or watch any of it on the TV, doesn't want to go to church. I'm saved, whatever. I'm living my life. I'm too busy for this nonsense. I think when they get there, they'll have to wait for their entertainment of God or for for God to entertain their turn. How am I trying to say that? I think they'll have to wait for their audience with the king. And that just makes sense. God's very fair like that, and he'll give you what you want. You don't have time. Okay, he's not going to force it. Okay, now, when Esther's turn was, and remember how we talked about when they could put on anything to go see the king, so they would put on all their works and all their fruit to impress the king. And then remember, Esther came, she just came in meditating on the word. I love that. That's so beautiful. Now, when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail means father of the mighty, the uncle of Mordecai, which means warrior, who had taken her for his daughter, was come in to go into the king, she required nothing. I'm coming just covered in your word, Abba, my father. Nothing but what Haggai, meditate on the word, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, had appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all of them and obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebet, in the 7th year of his reign. So we just had a timeline there. So remember, it was 3.5 years. In his 3rd year, start of his 3rd year, he throws a 6-month party. And so that brings us to 3.5 years. And then that's when Vashti gets kicked out. And that might have been the sign of Jonah. Who knows? I'm not exactly sure on this, but I know there's meaning here. We got to dive into this. Then come 3.5 years more, that brings us to the 7th year. And now let's talk about the 10th month. So that is a 10 and a 7 is a 17. So there's a 17 symbolism in there. It's 4 months past a 3.5 years. So if it was 7 years and 6 months, like our Rapture story, it was 4 months after that, which brings us to our next Passover, right? Oh, I just love how that fits together. We need more study on that. I'm not nailing that down. I'm just saying there's a reason 10th month, 7th year is put in there. And then we're going to talk about the 12th year, 13th year. Okay. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins. That's Jesus, talking about us. We obtained grace and favor more than all the other nations. So that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast. So we get raptured, we get a crown upon our head, and he makes a great feast unto all his princes and servants, even Esther's feast. And maybe that's our rapture story. Maybe that's our 7 years in heaven, right? And he made a release to all the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. Interesting. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet shewed her kindred, nor the people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh. Bigthan means gift of God. That's like Jesus. And Teresh means firm and desire. So we know Jesus is the desire of the nations, firm like a rock. So these two names represent Jesus, but they're going to show up to be what appears to be bad guys assassinating the king. So I'm not sure how to explain this best, but Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, that's Jesus, they were wroth and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus, the chief prince. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. So she's like, hey, Mordecai just saved your life, so write this down in the books. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were both hanged on a tree. Who was hanged on a tree? Cursed is he who is hung on a tree. That's Jesus. So that seemed like a bad guy story, but it's about Jesus, so I'm not sure how that fits in. And it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. End of chapter 2. That was a mouthful, wasn't it? So I hope that was delightful. And I'm going to practice my shofar and see if we can start blowing trumpets every day like we're instructed to and start waking up the soul of the earth. And then we're going to raise the dead with our loud noise, right? Hey, Mr. Bones, we're going to raise you.